Carol, what's the Fed do now? I know, thanks to your education for all of us, the Fed targets 2% inflation every year. Well, we ain't at 2% or 3.2%. What's coming next?
So there's this narrative that's going around Wall Street that we are going to get something that's called a soft landing. That means that the inflation comes down to that target without wrecking the economy. And I call this, and have for a while, the horror movie economy. Because, like in horror movies, Jesse, when everybody thinks that it's safe to come outside, that the killer is gone, and then they come out and he's there with the chainsaw, and then they all get murdered. I kind of feel like that's the point that we're at right now, that it seems like things are on the right trajectory and that they're moving along. But there are many points of concern, but a couple that I want to point out for you. One is that consumer. As I mentioned, they're in these very difficult personal situations. Their balance sheets are getting wrecked. The wages are coming down. Businesses, probably aren't going to be accelerating their investments anytime soon. And so if that consumer gives way, we may see that as a catalyst for a recession, and then everything kind of falls after that. So that may bring down inflation, but it may bring down the economy with it. If the consumer is able to stay tight, on the other hand, we could have sticky and persistent inflation, particularly because of energy. We had this political stunt where they released emergency supplies of oil to try to bring down the energy cost for a little bit of time. We also had a very mild winter last year, and that's not just here in the US, but in Europe. That was a gift, not a strategy. So if we end up with a cold winter, we have this huge supply demand imbalance in energy, and certainly no investment in traditional fossil fuels. So there are things like that I think could make inflation either rear its ugly head and accelerate again, or at least stick around for a long time, which means that you have this continued burden on the middle class, even if the economy at the headline level stays kind of stagnating.
Carol, I have a question that's probably a dumb one, but I try to think about these things as best I can for what it means for the future. You brought up the credit card debt being $1 trillion. I saw today it's something like 36% of Americans have no savings left. It's all gone. They can't pay off anything if emergency happens. So the consumer is getting to a place where he's going to be in dangerous territory, flat out personal bankruptcy territory. I'm not naive enough to think the American consumer is going to wake up today and realize, crap, I need to not go out to eat tonight. People tend to keep going until they can't possibly go anymore. This is a long question. This is a long way of saying, what happens when Americans' personal debt gets to the point where it can't go any further anymore? The credit card bills don't get paid. Maybe you miss a mortgage payment, car payments. What's that mean for the overall economy when the consumer kind of goes?
Yeah, I think that's actually a very brilliant and insightful question, Jesse. The reality is that we have an economy that is driven 70% by consumer spending. And so if the consumer is tapped out and they feel like, or maybe they just don't have access to any more credit that they can take on, or it's become too much of a burden for them, they're out of savings, there aren't enough jobs for them to go out and take on 2 and 3 jobs now. We know some people have 2. And I think that is a potential catalyst for us to go into some type of a recessionary environment. And that's why I was saying previously, this idea that we are now, out of the woodworks and on this perfect trajectory is insane. We are coming off of nearly 15 years of suppressed policy, monetary policy, where there was interference with interest rates and insane money printing. That means a lot of people were able to take on debt at very cheap rates, and it was able to sustain them for a long time. So as policy changes, it takes a while in any sort of regard in order to work its way through the economy. After 15 years of this, near zero and sometimes zero interest rate policy, it's going to take longer. So the reality is, do not think that we are out of the woodwork. There is something coming. We do have to pay. There are consequences for what has happened. And unfortunately, as it always does, it falls on the individual. It falls on Main Street America, not on Wall Street.
You want to watch our special on George Washington? It's freaking awesome. Well, you can. All you have to do is become a First TV supporter. That gives you access to all of our specials on demand, and it's cake. All you have to go to is thefirsttv.com/support. Thefirsttv.com/support. Become a supporter. Enjoy learning about George Washington.